Yeah, so we can go ahead and begin. We're sent out the packet of readings that contains links to all the readings, and then also the rules of engagement that we're looking at to set. So we all have like some common expectations for behavior at the burial ground site. And a little bit later on, I'm hoping that by tomorrow I'll have the story map for the burial ground complete. And I'll send that out. Henry took a look at that earlier this week, and Chris is doing some editing, and I'll send it around for more edits. But that one, the story map that we've created is basically, it summarizes all the work we've done for the 2023 survey season, and then pulls from that what we're going to be looking at in the 2024 season based on the work we've been doing with the memorialization committee and what needs to be defined at the burial ground. So, but what I wanted to go over today was basically making sure that we can give expeditioners everything they need to be prepared to be part of the program, at the burial ground, the excavations, and have them understand what the parameters of the work that we're doing are, why there's a need for sensitivity for a lot of these topics that we're going to be dealing with, especially when it comes to why we're not excavating or any human remains, or trying to keep the burials preserved. And really the whole point of the excavation season is to protect the burials. That's the end goal of our season. We have done what we need to do and know exactly where they are. So see a few more people in there. Hey, Terry. Hey, Madeline. How are y'all doing? And Sakina, hello. How are you?
Hello.
I saw your edits in the document, Sakina. Thank you.
Edits?
Oh,
Oh,
you had put some comments in there. Maybe it was an earlier document. I'm sorry, Sakina. You're good. So,
I'm still reading and going over all that material.
oh, good. All right. Yeah, there's a lot there. There's
It's
a lot
very
there.
interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. But what I wanted to start with is a general outline of how we're going to be disseminating the materials to expeditioners, and just so everybody knows that this what we're providing expeditioners as background material. All of the archaeology staff, including myself, is going to be completely familiar with, so we're all on the same page. But basically, how when people register for an expedition, Patrice, you just did this. When you register for an expedition, you fill out a registration form, and then as soon as you submit that, this will be starting on Monday when we get Stephen and I get this all arranged in the Google Forms. As soon as you submit your registration form, saying that you want to come on a program, you're going to get a link to two things. One is going to be the reading list, and then also a personal information form. And when you fill out the personal information form, there's going to be, as part of that, there's going to be an acknowledgement of that we're working at the burial ground, and that there's going to be sensitive information that we're going to be talking about, and that'll provide another link to the reading list. And in that acknowledgement, basically, people will understand that the reading list is preparing folks for the expedition, that we're also going to be talking about what's in the reading list in the pre-arrival Zoom, which we call the Power of Place Zoom, that happens before people arrive on the program. And there'll also be a link for people to register for the Zoom presentation. And what Stephen's going to be doing is, he'll be checking these registrations to make sure that people have filled out their personal information form, that they have the link to the readings, and also that they've signed, through the Google Forms, have signed the acknowledgement of difficult content, with the burial ground work that we're doing. And then when we get into the Zoom call, which is going to be probably like a month out before the program, what that Power of Place presentation is going to be is a discussion of, not just the history of Montpelier, we'll include that, but we're also going to place this within the context of the work that we're doing at the burial ground. And we're going to really start to, before people come on the Zoom, we're going to ask them to have read the required readings, which are those first 4 to 5 readings that are fairly short. They should be able to be, in a half an hour to 40 minutes, you should be able to read those. We're going to ask that they have reviewed those, so those can be discussed in this pre-arrival Power of Place Zoom meeting. And when in the discussion in this Zoom meeting, one of the things that we're going to be talking about is, the need for sensitivity for the burial ground to be treated as a sacred space. That, in terms of the archaeology at the burial ground, it's an invasive process. So we want to be very careful and have prescribed methods that we, are and aren't doing in terms of the depth of excavations and the importance of preserving the burial context at the burial ground, and also the importance of preserving the sanctity of the burial ground. That we are, essentially intruders into a home space in the work that we're doing, and that we want to preserve this space as one that is the resting place for the ancestors. And so at the end of the Zoom call, what people will be informed of is that, and we'll go over this as well in the Zoom call, that there are rules of, expected behavior for all involved, so that we just basically, we've got a set of protocols that everybody understands, and that there's no misunderstanding. And that after the Zoom call, what people will need to do is acknowledge through a Google form that they digitally sign that they agree to the terms of those rules at the burial ground. And so and then following that, what we'll do is, before people arrive, we're going to require that they digitally sign that Google form that acknowledges that they will meet, that they were going to abide by those rules that we prescribed for working in the burial ground. And if they don't, I will call them to ask, why they haven't been able to sign, and basically tell them that it's a requirement, and that if they can't sign and they can't give a good reason for this, that they're not allowed to be part of the program. And as harsh as that sounds, I think it's going to be a lot more difficult to have people on site and have to deal with this. And we do not want to have to go through that. I've learned from just experience with the 20 years we've been doing these programs. If someone's a bit of a nightmare before they arrive, it gets even more fun when they arrive. So we just want to avoid that, and not to be casual about it, but it's just, it's best to be proactive in all this. So does that make any sense? Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Matt, I think it makes perfect sense. I think just from a teaching standpoint, it follows best practices. We're not assuming that everyone is in the same place at the same moment. And I think, if anything, being on this side of life now, people are all over the box in society, and we can't make any assumptions about where people are coming from or what they do or don't know. I think it also requires a commitment with thought and rigor. So for whatever reason people may be doing this, if having this protocol makes people go, oh, I didn't know it was like that, or maybe this isn't going to work out for me, this time, it's not necessarily for us to question why people may or may not. But I think in the same way that we developed a rubric for what we consider to be best practices, I think people will be able to benefit from the steps and the missteps that we make for continuing to do this for future work, especially in the popular climate that we're in right now.
Yeah. No, thank you, Patrice.
That was
Gonna
beautiful.
say I'd almost love to have had these for every field season we've ever had at Montpelier. So,
Well, Terry, that's a good point because that's where we're moving with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's you hit the nail right on the head with like in terms of having our department become a community-based archaeology program where the primary community, the community that has primacy is the descendant community. That is one that we want to apply to all sites because I don't know of a site that will ever excavate that isn't the space of the enslaved community. I mean, it just doesn't
Well-
happen at Montpelier.
and I think, we've long talked about our department when I was there as a department that practices respect. And that's been one of the values for a long time. And part of that is not just respect for each other, but respect for the people who were studying, right? And whose lives we're remembering. And I think that goes, I think we would all want archaeologists of the future to be respecting the places that we lived and worked and right, and we're buried, and there's no reason not to extend that respect backwards to anyone. So I quite like this.
Mhm.
There was one expeditioner, I can't remember who it was, but talked about how what we're doing in this regard isn't, is far from being a negative in terms of making people want to come on these programs. It's a positive, and that we should actually somehow convey in our advertising of these programs. And that's something that, given Stephen a big push to look at how we develop our website, our web pages, and figure out how to make this more of a front loaded, even before, before you even register for a program, but seeing this from the very first part of all this. So, and with this, to be very selfish, any suggestions you all have, in regard to this, and if you all were willing to look at the at our webpage, I'll send this to you all afterwards. I'll make a note. The www.montpelier.org/dig page. I'll send you the link where people first look at what program they want to come on. Any suggestions in that regard would be appreciated. And like I said, the beautiful thing is, for this season, this is an absolute requirement, and it sets the course for the work we've achieved through parity, the ability to do work in the burial ground, and then like we were talking about for the rest of the work we're doing forevermore here at Montpelier. Did anyone would have wanted to start out first with was to see if anyone had anything to add or thoughts about the rules of engagement, and even the title for that. What I could do is I could share screens with you all and bring that up. Yeah, so this commitment to honor the sacredness of the Montpelier burial ground of the enslaved. Any comments on that? I know you all have had a chance, most of you all have had a chance to look at this, but any questions about this document?
I had a very practical former field director question about drinking on site. Does that mean no water bottles and there will be designated areas for drinking water, or is
Yeah, Chris had the
staying
same
hydrated
question.
okay?
Yeah, that's wellness is something that we need to edit that to make sure that drinking of water is part of is actually a requirement for people to be well. So I thought we had changed that in here. Let's see. Or make it at least
We
let's make
talked
it
about it. But
we talked about it. Okay.
we talked about it, but I don't think we made the change. So thank you for raising that point, Terry.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. Let me see. Where is that? What number is that one, Terry?
I think
Number
it's
two.
two.
Yeah.
There's number 2.
So need to refine to and with statement in regard to wellness at the site. We'll know what to do with this, both because that involves both eating and drinking, like consuming energy just so you don't pass out during the course of excavation. What this means is casual eating and drinking. So and also there's part of this is the acts around eating and drinking, but we need to work on that. You're right. Thank you, Terry. Yeah, Pandora.
So whenever you're refining that statement, it's in regards to actually being in the space of the burial ground, correct? Is that what this is in reference to? Being in the space, because outside of the actual space, the perimeter,
Mhm.
but this is in direct relation, and this is my question. This is in direct relation to being in the space of the burial ground where the excavating will be taking place. Is that what this is in reference to?
That yes, and yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And I mean, for right
The work
now,
area.
what's that,
Yeah, the
Henry?
work area. I was just saying the work area is what you're referring to.
Yes, that's what I was just wanting to
Mhm.
clarify, so that if I was on the outside, just reading this as a, say a first timer coming to the expedition, the burial ground, this is the space within the burial ground. Because there's space outside of the burial ground, and I know it says the burial ground, but we're specifically talking about the actual burial ground, correct?
Yeah, and basically
Okay.
that's going to include the work site because where we're placing, and this has gone over in the story map that we're finishing up right now, is where we're placing units. We're considering that in the burial ground because what we're doing this season is trying to define the extent of the burial ground. So right now we don't know whether we're in or out of the burial ground until we have the units excavated and uncover or don't uncover the tops of grave shafts. So we have to assume that we're in the burial ground wherever we're placing units. But then, that we're going to have a designated area outside of the burial ground on the other side of Westgate Road, over where the overflow parking lot is. That's where we're going to have our base of operations, and we're going to create a map for this that shows where all this area is. And what we'll do is we don't have that map yet, but we'll add that to the story map that we're working on right now, and have that be the story map will be a big part of the required readings for people to understand this space and the physical layout of the space and what they're going to be doing.
That's
I
actually
had
good. Oh, sorry.
oh, no, I had a question. How large is the burial ground? This is
The acreage of the burial ground is somewhere between an acre to 2 acres. And that's what we're defining right now. The total area of the woodlot is 4 acres, but we're estimating the acreage of the burial ground is somewhere around 2 acres. But again, that's the whole point of this season, is to define the extent. And when you get this story map, I'm gonna look over one last set of changes that Chris made. When you get that story map, that's going to really, you'll get a much better understanding of what we're looking at with this.
So the actual area for the memorial, how large would that extend out to?
We don't know that yet. I mean, that's the let me see if I've got, this is the story map that I'm talking about right here. This is a view of the site. Let me see if I've got a better map that's down here that's larger. Yeah, this is the yellow dotted line is the extent of the area that we're testing this season. And where right now we're thinking that the burials are based on the GPR survey is somewhere in this area right in here. And then where the memorial potentially is going to be placed is somewhere in here. But there's an isolated and grave-like anomaly right here. We need to test all this area and see whether these anomalies are actually graves that, excavating to the top of grave shafts, and are there features in between these as well. So, and that's like what you're asking, Pandora, is the site the burial ground? We are assuming it is until we know that it isn't. And that's the whole point of giving respect in this space to the ancestors, is because we don't know, for instance, in this area, are there graves here, or are these even graves? I mean, again, with some of these patterning, it seems like the very strong likelihood, but that's what we're testing. And the area that we're thinking about right now, and this is not a given, this is going to be a suggestion, and we'll review this with, Henry, with the MDC, and give a chance for you all to look at this as well, is we're thinking of the staging area for the site being in the overflow parking lot. And, figuring out, and this is, Chris is talking to me a lot about this, is where to go back and forth across the road, all kinds of things that we need to figure out for this season. So it makes me really thankful we've got this large overflow parking lot here now. Keeps on coming in handy, and it's going to be probably, at least in terms of our lifetime, a permanent feature. So it's temporary back in 2006, but it's become quite the used landscape feature.
That point, Matt, brings up a question that's kind of a follow-up question for Pandora and anyone else, is regarding the rules of engagement. While a lot of this is written describing the behaviors of participants in the space of the burial ground, the workspace itself extends to, like Matt was mentioning, that overflow parking lot potentially, or wherever we determine that space to be. And my assumption was, or is, that I would, in general, I mean, a lot of these rules are kind of just givens. It's nice that we're finally putting these into rules for participants, but like the way that people speak about the space, I would personally, or I'm curious what you all think, but I would expect that to carry over into like lunchtime or when we're on breaks in that space, that this isn't just, okay, you've walked into the space, you've exited the space, and therefore all the rules are out the window. That doesn't seem like the right thing to do either. But there are certain things in this list that I'm not sure would carry over into a lunch break situation, like not eating and drinking. So I don't know if we need a separate set of rules for just the general work site, larger work site, or if that should just be stated clearly. I'm curious what your all's thoughts on that are.
I would assume that the rules would apply to what I'm considering the work site itself, which would be possibly that area in that temporary area where the temporary parking is, and any of that area. I mean, once you leave that area and go to the visitor center or something like that to eat, I think I mean, certainly some of these rules, I guess, apply to that, but primarily, I think we're talking about the entire work area, not just the burial sites itself, but the entire work area, wherever you have your staging area and anything else. And then I think I think your point is well taken, and that maybe needs to kind of be differentiated or somehow further defined in terms of the area that we're including.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Henry, that you just stated in the opening paragraph. This includes the work site, the area, or the working area around the burial ground, and just specify those main areas where work will be taking place. You just write it in the very beginning, then you don't have to have a separate document. This, it spells it out from the beginning. This includes not only the actual burial site, but the working area surrounding the burial site and the workstation. I'm not sure if I'm using the correct terminology. That's across the road. Okay, thanks, Chris. you know, those includes those areas. And that's where you would refrain from the things that are listed here in the guidelines. I think if you just stated up front, that would just keep it all together. And then it's right there for people to see.
What with this, the only exception that that might be would want to ask about is if over, let me bring up the map again. If over in this area, we had a designated area under a tent for having lunch and taking breaks. And then it was specified, this is the area, like if you are, you know, not just eating a snack that you might need to eat at the site, and being very careful to make sure you're like the wrapper from a candy bar. Because you know, there's some folks that come on programs that need to you know, eat a sugary snack every half hour and have a drink, you know, that is some kind of fortified drink every hour. And at this, you know, within the burial ground, they would have their backpack with them, and they would make sure to, you know, place any wrappers from that in their backpack and be respectful of the space. But then if you were eating lunch, you obviously you wouldn't do it here, but there would be an area over in the work spot that was designated for eating lunch and taking a break. Would that be suitable?
I think so.
Yeah.
As long as, you know, you specify that. And for those who may, because of dietary or medical issues, need to really be able to have something with them, then you could indicate that, you know, so that when other people see someone with a drink, or that they don't think that means that they should all go get a drink as well, or, you know, they understand that some people have to have that.
Yeah, I agree, because like you said, Matt, you want people who have health conditions not to be restricted from participation, but to have that freedom. But also at the same time, as Madeline said, is that there needs to be explicit guidelines that state if you are a person who has a dietary need where you have to have food and drink on your person, to be mindful that all wrappers, containers are contained in, you know, your backpack, so that nothing is left on the grounds, and that it remains, you know, within your person, and then it can be disposed of in that eating area that you have designated outside of the work area. But I think people that do have those dietary needs are used to those things, and there's that accommodation for them, but it should be spelled out what the expectation is for them. So you provide the accommodation, but you also provide the guidelines for using that accommodation.
And these will be like, we'll have people know this and understand this. We'll go over this in the Zoom meeting, you know, on a very general basis. And then, you know, as y'all have experienced, like when you got to the site, this past October, Chris and the crew gave rules of the road, like don't step on the edge of units and don't step on shovels, and this is where the eating area is. Like we'll give everyone a tour and have a thorough understanding of where things do and don't happen. So we'll edit this, and probably item number 2, we might make a bulleted list under 2 with all this, so it's more clear and it's not such a massive paragraph that people that feel they have to move through. So, but this is a huge help. Pandora, did you have anything else on that?
Matt, I think it might be worth creating just definitions of what the work area is and what the burial ground is. And if specific one of these items refer only to something that needs to be a requirement for the burial ground, say burial ground. And if it's something that's required for the whole work area, say work area. And that may just kind of help with that clarification. But that would mean going through these, because, you know, you have like number 3, I commit to maintaining a respectful atmosphere in the burial ground. You know, right, work area includes burial ground, right? But burial ground does not necessarily include all of the work area, right? But does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
I just,
I think I was thinking about the same thing, Terry, and just going through all this. I would think that almost all of these are for both areas. The only one that is different is food with medical needs, but offensive language, inappropriate joking, insensitive conversations and arguments. All this is burial ground and work area. Do you all see anything that wouldn't include all spaces aside from the food that we just talked about?
I could see dawn and dusk possibly, just knowing how a field season goes, and sometimes
Up in Montpelier.
film crews out there really, really early, and sometimes they're out there really, really late just because of life. I could see pets mainly with visitors, but people walk their dogs on this property and they're not gonna see the parking lot as a restricted area for no pets. I realize this is,
Terry,
this is-
these rules are not for the public in general. This is for archaeology staff and anyone participating in the project. So if a visitor comes
So
with
pretty.
their dog,
Hurry up.
we are not going to tell them to leave leave the burial ground because they're not part of the team. So this is if we make these rules and have them be specified to anyone on the property, that goes beyond our department. We need to
Right.
work with the MDC. This would be something Pandora you
Right.
need to bring to Yola. But this is, pertains to the teamwork on the burial, working in the burial ground. Yeah, Pandora.
So I put in the comments that maybe if there are signs that would give guidance to people, if there are signs posted that says, this space, they're friendly signs, but they tell you that this is sacred space, or be careful, or just whatever the language is,
Or
because
research space.
a research space, because even as you just mentioned, Matt, the visitors who are walking their dogs, they might think twice about just plowing through, and they might be more respectful if they know. So if there's some type of temporary signage there during the excavation, it would give people some understanding, one, what's going on, and then they could be mindful that, this is something that, I might want to not just plow through with my dog or go jogging through type thing. They might take a thought, but they could also learn something too as to what's going on. So people won't know unless you tell them. And you may not have that chance verbally to tell people, but if you have signs of consideration, then they'll know.
I love that, Pandora. That's something I'll broach this with Krista and Yola, and I'll include you and Henry and Allison on this topic. That would be, and this would be something that maybe the memorialization committee, well, you all could decide who to give this responsibility to, but a list of suggested rules for the public and anyone, guides, visitors, and that would be a separate list to this one that we would. And right now, Hillary invited me to work on the sign for the burial ground. We could include that with that. That'd be great, and that would be very helpful for us. You're right, Pandora. That would help us with with visitors coming up to the site. And that's another thing we have to think about is how to usually we have visitors come right up to the units, and whether or not we want to have we did this in the South Yard because of the units and the dangers, is have the area stanchioned off and have people not be able to come into the work site, which I think is really I would think is necessary, but would love to get your all's thoughts on that. And that would be something we'd want to add into those rules, which would be, for visitors, the sign that's right beside the interpretive sign, do not go under the the stanchioned, like the rope stanchions, you know, stay on the path. And
Mhm.
we need to buy a lot more stanchions. So the little pigtail stanchions that we've got a whole barn full of them somewhere.
Right. I was thinking about that, and I think that that's really important because there will be areas. Okay. Your sectioned off areas. You don't want anyone walking through, visiting and falling over, kind of tripping over anything, as well as the areas where you're working, you do for safety as well as just because you're working in that area. You don't want some things kind of interfered with for a couple of reasons, but certainly for the safety of persons who are visitors on the property who decide, oh, let me see what's going on over here. You don't want any accidents. And I think some of the signs that would say there's some research going on, even the things that kind of explain some of the colors of the flags. I know that you are always very willing to talk to people, but I can also see that people will be coming up and they'll want to know what's going on, and maybe some of that will help so that you won't have to spend you or Chris or Terry or someone will have to spend almost all of your time explaining to visitors what's going on, or what are what do these flags mean or something. I think a lot of people want to know that, but maybe there's a way to have something that's very simple that helps people kind of have a sense of what's actually taking place.
Yeah, we're gonna working with Hillary to develop. I'm gonna suggest 2 signs. One which would be and this is a whole nother conversation, but just and this is not decided here because this would be another conversation, Henry, is a sign somewhere in this area, and then whether we replace the sign that's right here or stanchion this area off, I don't know, but that's a whole nother conversation. Talk to you and Allison about, Henry.
Thinking about what Madeline just said, maybe a little bit extreme, but on that sign, could you have like a QR code that really kind of that they could click on and it would tell them what's going on as well as them reading it?
Yeah, I think what we'd do is maybe have 2 different signages. One would be the large sign that's printed that had this kind of evergreen information, and that would also potentially include the rules for visitors that we're talking about. But then, in some areas we are going to be changing what visitors see in and month out. And so make those signs be on the ones you stab in the ground, and they're just laminated so they can change out quickly. So, but yeah, address both would be good.
Matt, I'm just looking at the headlines of the story map that you have pulled up, and I imagine a QR code that took people to this story map would answer lots of questions that visitors might have. And I presume the story map will continue to be updated as you all continue to change things. So that's a way to have that happen over and over and over again and not actually have to do anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
People know how to use
all
them now.
this. Yeah. All
So 5 years
this-
ago, I'd have been like,
right.
no QR codes. No one knows what they are, but how to
People
use
know
them
now.
Yeah.
And don't worry, and for those who don't know, if some little children are there, they'll show them what to do.
So, but Chris is working up a list of some of these questions, and we're gonna have probably further meetings on a lot of this as we get closer and closer to the actual field season happening. And what we're gonna do is this is a huge help, and we're gonna incorporate this into what we're doing, but then also have some maps. Chris and I will work up some maps that show where all this is, where these areas are going to be, and then, you know, give you all a chance to have feedback on all this. So this is a great start for all this. The other thing that wanted to see if anybody had any commentary on was the readings. And we've got, you know, the readings, there's two different sections. There's the required readings, which is, you know, 4 or 5 readings that cover these basic points, the topics to be presented. The you know, African American cemeteries is being rendered invisible in the process of reclamation by descendant communities, working with communities, you know, outlining a clientage model, and then issues surrounding reclaiming skeletal remains excavated from African American burial sites. This is something that want to have expeditioners and all of us be aware of the sensitivity of the past work that previous archaeologists have done and what people assume that archaeologists are doing, so that before people arrive, the issue of talking about excavating in disturbing human remains is taken care of. We do not want people making jokes about digging up bodies. We don't want comments made about human remains. We want to be respectful in conversations. And so giving people an understanding of what has happened, you know, in the past with what archaeologists have done with having bodies stored in labs and not respected is one that people understand why there, you know, there's a history here that we are, as archaeologists, trying to reclaim and rewrite. And then general sensitivity around the erasure of African American histories from landscapes. So as you all suggest, and we come across additional short videos and clips, we're going to add these to this. But with expeditioners, what we're mindful of is, you know, having a 2-hour video, people aren't going to watch it. But a 3 to 5 minute video, that's going to be accessible. A short, you know, a 6-page article, they're going to be able to handle. The longest one is going to be the clientage model presentation by Dr. Blakey. He and I we're talking about this. This is going to be the lunch and learn for February 21st. So might be a section of that where we can reduce down. But then there's also additional resources, and this is a list that we're going to keep in this. We're going to be revising this and getting rid of some duplication that's in here, but then also have an even longer list for staff and for the field school who will be here for a month. We're looking at some way, you know, to understand what people have read, and we're trying to think of a way to do that would allow us to understand and track what people have done. But really the big way to do this is through the Zoom call, where we're going to ask people to have reviewed these required readings and then have a discussion of that and really hammer home in that Zoom call the need to review this material. And of course, the end product of that would be after the Zoom call, them needing to, you know, make the commitment to these points here. But for the readings, I don't know if anyone had any reflections or thoughts on the readings that they wanted to that you saw that immediately came to mind.
I have not had a chance to look at, I mean, I just kind of reviewed the list, and I thought that as far as the additional readings, that, you know, it's a good balance, like it covers a variety of things from previous projects like the African burial ground to information and people just are not really so aware of, like with some of the cemeteries. And the required readings I thought were great because of things that they're short enough that people are willing to do that. And I think that they're not too heavy, you know what I mean, academic, too heavy scholarly for people to decide, I don't want to do that. So I thought it was a good selection.
And yeah, a lot of folks gave input to that from everybody in the department. Yeah, Liz.
Hi, one thing that just came up, Cairo mentioned is asking if we might consider doing reflections after the readings,
Mm,
like reflective
So-
writing.
actual written reflections.
Mhm.
What do you all think
Just
of that?
throwing it out there.
That sounds good.
Do you mean that people would do this and then send them in or something like that, or what? I think in theory it's good, but I think for depending upon, again, where people are coming from in their lives and spaces, to make a requirement that they would send something in or post something. I mean, it could go either way. I mean, this is, this is the generation where, blogging and posting, comes very natural for some people, and other people, don't want to do it. I think maybe suggesting that people reflect and in their own way, just keep a record of it, so that when they come on site, they would have these things that they could share with people. And that may again front load it again to have people thinking about these things before they get there.
Hello, I'm Cairo. It's not to like the reflection isn't to be graded or anything. It's just to ensure that it has been read. Just any of the required readings, just making sure that they have been read, either from the beginning or all the way to the end, but nothing to be graded or for anybody to be judged, but just kind of see the level of where everyone is at and in that kind of like evolution. But it's not nothing, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so again, I really do understand that, and I appreciate it, and I would love for everybody to do it. But I think it can be a suggestion, not necessarily an expectation, and suggest that people could do it in a format that's comfortable for them. So somebody might want to blog, I might want to take an old composition book, and write down certain things. But I think just priming people with, when you come on site, we want to have these conversations, and we want to do the best that we can to ensure that you're not coming into it cold. And so for people to have at least had the thought in their minds, maybe they haven't written anything, but just know there's an expectation when you come that you will have digested this. And for your own benefit, as well as your investment, it's good for you to look at this. And for some people that might be, I'm on the plane, coming to Virginia, and I'm looking at it now to get my, head squared away. So I'm kind of in the middle with that, thinking about, how students do and don't do, and even now as an adult, like what I've got going on my plate.
Okay, yeah, I think I'm just thinking from during our field school. Like we were already here and we were already settled, and we were going through these reflections as we were touring the property and as things were coming up. But I wasn't thinking of it as reading everything before someone arrives, just reading it as the conversation comes up.
And I mean, as a personal note, I'm even more aware than ever before. I mean, being in Atlanta, with the pace and things of life that I lead now, I mean, I think about coming to Montpelier, and it's like, I mean, I'm literally kind of moving back in a different time and space, that when I was in Charlottesville and would come to Montpelier, I was kind of situated a different way. And so I appreciate that thinking about reflecting helps people get focused in the present for when they're coming and kind of diving in. And yet I think in a lot of ways, for some people, my world, I know, moves faster sometime than I would be situated to just dive into a Montpelier conversation if I wasn't thoughtful about it.
And I would have to think,
Go on.
okay, I'll make mine really short. For me, I guess when I think about the whole thing of the reflections, I'm probably more leaning toward Patrice's side, only because like if I work or something, everything is I have to, through any continuing education, then I'm evaluating or reflecting. And now, as I'm getting a little bit older, I feel like, yes, I'll reflect, but I don't want to feel obligated to have to demonstrate, either by responding, as I'm reading, to show that I'm reflecting. I do like the opportunity, maybe when we first get there, that because maybe we've read, we have an opportunity before we begin any excavations to sit for a bit and have a discussion that does allow input or to be able to share reflections that we have from the readings. So
Yeah, just additional comment, I kind of lean toward Patrice as well, but and yeah, when they get there, you could always, as a preliminary thing, have some discussion and get feedback from them. Maybe you could also have somewhere in there just provide a space where they could, if they feel like it, they could comment and maybe suggest some additional readings that they think would apply. And that way you're kind of getting at the same thing. You know, you see whether people are actually focusing on the readings and the task at hand.
Oh, this is Sakina. I was able to read and watch video. And as I was reading, I started taking notes and writing down a few little comments. And that African Burial Ground article in New York by Michael Blakely, that was really, really interesting. I really wanted to share that with another like genealogy group. But they're very interesting.
Okay.
Thank you, Sakina. Pandora, you had your hand up.
Yes, I raised my hand. One thing, listening to the different comments from Patrice and Henry and Madeline, one thing that comes to mind, one is a question and one is a suggestion. So the question would be, the reading is required, correct? It's required that people have an understanding of what's to prepare them for this particular activity, this expedition. Is that correct?
Yes,
The
yeah,
read-
there's 4
Okay.
or 5 required readings.
There are 4 or 5 required readings. So the suggestion is, keeping in mind that schedules are busy, there's actually, I guess, 2 parts of the suggestion. One is if there's a Google Doc where people have the option, you know, to comment, is if you want to see, you know, that they want to make a comment on one of the 4 readings. If it's on the Google Doc and they go in and just say, I found this very interesting, you know, make a comment. If you're, you know, trying to keep, as Cairo said, would like to see what people are interpreting or understanding from what they read, that can be questions that could be brought up, say, whenever you do gather together. Say one of the comments was, because it can be anonymous, it doesn't have to be someone's name attached to it. But I was just thinking of that as if, you know, if it was optional, and then if there was the possibility of having that type of document where people could write the comments down or address, you know, the one article or the one thing that they saw that stood out to them, where it's not burdensome of asking them to review or evaluate each one, but they would, you know, have the opportunity to comment maybe on 1 or 2 or all of them.
Yeah, thank you, Pandora. Chris.
Yeah,
this is
very-
something I'm sure Chris is gonna build on that. Thank you, Pandora.
Kind of read my mind. Pandora had a very similar comment to say, but I think similar to Patrice, even in our field school, when we have students there for an entire month and we give them a set of readings to do, half the time they don't often engage with them and they're graded on it. And I think having, for expeditioners who are there for only a week, we having an expectation of like to complete a full reflection is, while we expect them to read it, we may be setting them up for failure even though we still have it as an expectation, if that makes sense. So in order to make sure that they still complete the readings, that we have productive conversations, I do like your idea, Pandora, about having some kind of optional thing. I'm wondering if like a Google form where there's like multiple choice, like what's your reaction to this, or like how did this make you feel, or do you have any like some boxes to fill in some questions and they can fill it out. Also on day one of our expeditions, we usually have like the intro where it's centered around the concept of the power of place and we all introduce ourselves. Maybe that's a time to have a very specific conversation around the readings that's more in depth. And it will become evident when people have or have not as a shaming thing, but we might be able to then, I don't know, play one of the shorter videos. It's like 3 minutes that we all quietly listen to and then reflect on. And maybe that's their second or third time watching it. Maybe it's their first. Hopefully not their first, but at least we have given multiple checkpoints along the way, from Matt's lecture to emails to the Power of Place lecture, multiple opportunities and checkpoints for people to have engaged and reflect. I don't know if I just want to make sure it's done, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're getting at kind of the point, Chris, with all this is that we want to have people be, what Patrice, you said at the very beginning is we expect everybody is going to be at different places before they arrive, but once we walk onto the site, that there's a baseline that's established that we can be secure is there. And, finding some sort of evaluation process. I think that this has been the real takeaway for this, which is helpful in multiple media. Jerry, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I have maybe a slightly different idea about how to, for both of these things, the required readings and the list of commitments. I think a lot of this comes in how it's presented and how it's shared in its first moment with participants. And so I wonder if there's a way to do that gets to, because this isn't right, the readings isn't just so you know what a African-American burial ground is, right? It's also so that you're coming into this project with more preparation than you typically would come to an expedition, because this is a sacred site that is very, very meaningful to the descendant community. And so we need to make sure that everyone who walks onto this site and puts a trowel in the ground has more knowledge than the average person about this site, right? So it's also a way to demonstrate and show respect towards the descendants and the ancestors, right? In the same way that the list of commitments are. So I think one thing is you could put in a list of the commitments and add one that says no one gets to work on this project if they haven't done the required readings, right? So they're literally signing their name along the dotted line saying, I've read these things. I've watched these things. I've made this commitment. And then I also wonder if maybe, right, when they get sent this package of stuff, there's a video along with it that's coming from the MDC expressing the importance of the site to the MDC, that they're inviting expeditioners to their space and how important it is and why these things are necessary. And just get across that, like, this isn't just a week-long vacation, right? This isn't just a research project, right? This is more. And so we're asking more. And I think that that then people may not just feel obligated or feel like they have to check a box, but that may actually like get them to understand what's going on. I think the vast majority of the people who come on expeditions take the experience seriously, but it usually takes, right, that first day where they kind of are like they go through mere distinction and they're like, oh, right, there's that, oh, this is what we're doing here. And right, and we need that moment, you need that moment to happen before they get here. for this
Yeah.
one, right? They
I-
can't have that moment of, oh, after they've been working on the burial ground for a day. So anyway, I just wonder if there's a way to couch it in the presentation ahead of time that hits those important. We're not just asking you to read some stuff, right?
Yeah, thank you, Terry. I think the Zoom meeting is going to be really critical to this. And this is one thing that I was going to talk with you, Henry, about is the possibility of either having, and Dr. Blakey suggested this even for his presentation, is to have either have a member of the MDC present during the Zoom meeting or a prepared statement or recording that could be played in the, beginning the Zoom meeting to express, not in my words as director of archaeology, but in the MDC's words and voice and tone and presence, that the importance of this, just like you were saying, Terry. And Henry, you took your mic off.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that that may be a good idea, to especially go along with that Zoom meeting that you have. Just emphasize more the importance of the whole process here, and I think that's something that we can work on doing.
That'd be great. And I think having, like, Henry, if you or someone of the MDC stated, just what Terry stated, that doing the readings, making this commitment is an important part of honoring our ancestors' space. But I don't need to put the words in your mouth, Henry. So, and I'm looking at the time, it's 3:02, and I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. And really appreciate everyone. This has been a huge, huge help and been very, giving us a lot more confidence in moving forward with this. So is there any things that people wanted to bring in before we close out the call? Just wanted to give folks a chance.
Just one last thing. I know on the I think it was the registration form, and I can talk to you about this. It's one area that I was just wondering if you talked about the Orange County region. It says Orange County region. Should it be a little bit more specific? Because if someone's thinking about just Orange County, would some individuals just think Orange County and that's it? I know you have other areas there. You can say other, and say Culpeper or whatever else it might be, but I just wondering if that should be looked at a little bit more detail.
We need help on that, Henry. Thank you. If we could talk. I'll give you a call right after this about that, because we have not sent that form out yet. That's the personal information form, and that's what we're working on based on this call as well. So thank you for looking at that, Henry. We'll get that changed. So
I just have a couple of reading suggestions. And this may even be like a post kind of reading, but I think that I think this program is going to create a lot of potential advocates for the preservation and protection of African American cemeteries, because people are going to learn that they're everywhere, not just at Montpelier. So I think that there might trying to find something about the latest federal legislation that's happened regarding to African American cemetery protection. There's the legislation in the state of Virginia that came through not too long ago.
can you
But
put
also
that in, Terry?
I don't have anything specific. I can get it for you, but I think
if you
that
could-
just some of those like practical, here's what you can do kinds of things.
And this,
Cemeteries
some
are
of the-
popular.
if
I
people
think
could
some of
add
the
that
NPR
in.
stories. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, Chris, if please add any comments you need and want into both the required reading materials and the community rules. What I'm going to do, and I know a lot of you are going to need to go, so I'm going to wrap this up real quick. Is I'm going to send the recording of this meeting out to everyone, along with the current version of both documents. And then also one last plea is I'm going to send out the registration information for the April 27th event as well. And if you all could pass that along. I know Pandora, thank you for sending that out to everyone for the groundbreaking bread event on April 27th. So
It hasn't actually gone out yet.
oh yeah, but I know you're preparing it. So thank you for that.
Oh, I'm helping. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But in the interest of time, want to be respectful to everyone's time. If anybody has any additional comments, send me an email and we'll add these in. But now it's 3:05, so I want to respect folks' time. And but thank you all for the feedback. And if anybody does have anything, it's very pressing, give me a call right after this. So, all right. Well, let me unshare screens here. Yeah. So, well, thank you, everybody. And thanks for taking so much time to help with this process. It's really very much appreciated and going to get us to where we need to go. So,
Good to see
Thank
everybody.
you. All
Thank
right.
you.
Take care. Bye.
and hello,
Bye.
Betty, just saw you after I stopped sharing the screen. So